All right, Joe Nappi on my Elevating Resilience podcast, a blast from my past.
What's up, Ange? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that I got to ink you in my calendar and get you here.
Nice.
So the reason why he's so busy, I'd like to share, first off, is I taught with Joe at Monmouth Regional for, I would say, like 18 years. You kind of came in right after me.
Right.
You were a football coach, so we became closer then. And then you became the voice of Monmouth. You became the guy that organizes everything. And for me, you became the guy who got it done. And to me, in education, sometimes outside of the classroom, you don't always have those people that stand up, raise their hand and say, I'll do it. And you did it better than anybody. And I would always love getting those text messages from you. And you wanted me to get something done. I wanted you to get something done. And you were always there, both you and your wife. So you were definitely a bright spot for me at Monmouth Regional. Everything about you, watching your kids grow up. And it's having you here now is an honor. Joe was named the New Jersey Teacher of the Year.
That's right.
And my husband watch him go through that process, and we wished he was here to see this because he's one of his favorite teachers that he was superintendent for. And so we're going to get right into it because I wanted to have Joe on this podcast, not because you are the New Jersey Teacher of the Year, not because I think the world of you as a teacher and I know what the kids say, because you were one of the only teachers that they talked all the time about with a positive remark, but because your story is amazing. And it pretty much epitomizes elevating resilience. So I'm going to stop talking finally and let you talk about, from high school, what was it like for you as a student?
Right. So, well, first of all, thanks. And I know you say I'm Mr. Monmouth, but when I came in 18 years ago, you were Mrs. Monmouth over there doing everything too. So I learned a lot from you
thanks.
in terms of doing all those things. So credit where credit is due over there. It was a joy. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that a lot of people find interesting about my story is I absolutely hated school for most of my upbringing up there. I was completely lost for years and years and years, really. From 8th grade on, if you look at it would be interesting to like look through my yearbooks to see this, because I was kind of like a doofy, nerdy kind of kid, trying to feel his oats. And then suddenly 8th grade, my hair goes long and my grades go low and I start getting suspended from school and I start getting involved in all sorts of things that happen. And a lot of that goes back, my parents were divorced. My mom struggled a lot. She was a single mom raising 2 kids. She was an oncology nurse, so pediatric oncology, working with kids with cancer. And she treated my cousin, and my cousin went through leukemia, really had a really tough time with it. And she ended up having some real struggles that, carried. I mean, I think this doing this job. It's not always easy to leave that at the door, when you came home. And my dad had gone out, being the big-hearted guy that he is. He married a woman from Oklahoma, my wonderful stepmother, brought my step family in. But he was essentially, a postal worker raising 5 kids and living in Hudson County, which I don't know if you know anything about property values in Hudson County, but this is not an easy thing to burden. So for me, I was kind of starved for attention. Like I just wanted somebody to pay attention to me, and it was really tough at that time. And I wasn't getting it at home, so I was going to seek that out at school in some of the worst possible ways that I could. So, 8th grade, I got sent home at the end of the year. I think I probably still hold a couple of records at Tinton Falls Middle School for like most detentions served and things like that. But they sent me home at the end of the year. I got no 8th grade trip, no graduation. They were just like, get your diploma and get out of here. My mom thought that she could set me straight by sending me to RBC. So I went to RBC, enrolled in football over there. It was going to be great. But, you can move me out of that scenario, but you didn't move me out of that scenario. You know what I mean? So when I got to RBC, I immediately had like more demerits, I think, than anybody's ever racked up in just a couple months. So I was kicked off the football team for fighting. I got thrown out of the school before Thanksgiving. And got sent to Monmouth. I was actually at Monmouth Regional for a couple weeks when I came in there. So by the time I made it to Monmouth Regional, sort of like expectations were set of me. I was the kid who got thrown out of middle school. I was the kid who got thrown out of RBC. So I don't know if you weren't here for this. I bet you did. This was probably pre your time. But Monmouth Regional used to have this weird drop schedule. So we would have like, it was an A day, it was a B day, it was a C day, it was a D day.
Yeah, no. I got there in 2000.
Yeah, it was a really wild schedule. And I showed up like Thanksgiving, and everybody kind of knew what was going on, and they
Yeah.
threw me right in, and it was just like, they would say in the morning, they're like, it's a H day. And I'm like, all right, what does that mean? And they're like, it's H day, go to your H day class. I'm like, all right. So I look at my schedule, first period, go to my first period class.
Yeah.
This is in your class. Good. It's H day. And they just kept saying these letters to me over and over. So I go out, I did it like 2 or 3 times. I went to the first period, second period was wrong 3 times. And I was like, all right, I give up. I went outside of the school over there and I got rounded up for cutting class. So like immediately first day, they dragged me in for cutting class. My mom, when I had gotten thrown out of RBC, again, we didn't have a lot of money to send me to RBC. So she had gone to the church. We were both at St. Anselm, and she had asked the priest for a scholarship to send me to the school. So she got a scholarship for me, and then I got booted out of the school. So salty is not, I don't think, a strong enough word for how angry she was with me. So she enrolled us in a youth probation program. So parents can do this in Freehold, where like if you have a troubled kid, you can enroll them in a program, and it's like being put on parole. So the parole officer gives you a set of standards. Like I was getting my curfew set by a parole officer. My grades were being checked by the parole officer. So when I got that first detention, they made a big deal out of it to me. The second day I panicked because I was like, I can't go back. Like, I don't know what's happening. They were like giving me detention. They wouldn't listen to anything that I had to say. I tried to explain myself to the vice principal. The vice principal was like, I know who you are. You know what I mean? Like that was like
was
the
it
way
Bob
they
Nagel?
Oh, it was Nagel. Yeah. I wasn't going to throw him out there on this, but yeah, it was him. But he was like going to take a hard stand on me and show me how it was. And when, after that happened, the second day I didn't show up to school in the morning and I got suspended, and my mom called my probation officer, and then the police came to my house, and I tried to run from the police, and I got arrested and sent to juvenile hall. And
oh boy.
I was put in a group home because that's the way that they handle that right there. It's like to show you the consequence that went in it. And then this proceeded like a legal battle between my parents to get me out of the group home, and I ended up moving in with my dad in Bayonne. So I went from there to him. And my dad's very like, you got to do your job. You got a job to do. School's your job. And also your job is your job. He was his second job besides being a postal worker. He ran the Daily News, so he was like the manager for the Daily News. So I think I'm like one of the last paper boys that ever existed. So I used to have to. So when I got to Bayonne, I was like, I got to get up at 5:30 in the morning and do the papers, and then I got to go to school, and then I got to come back and sometimes meet him in Journal Square to do the papers again. So it was a big, a lot of work ethic and discipline, but
that helped.
It did definitely, so to sort of like develop. I think I still see today sort of that work ethic that he tried to drill into me at that point in time. But again, it's really what I was still looking for was a guidance or attention or something like that. And like when I went to school, I was a pain in the ass, and when I came home, I was a pain in the ass. So like I wasn't really, nobody was really reaching me on that level, and that really was I think a struggle for me through those years. I mean, because high school did not end well for me. By the time I got through high school, I had, again, you look back on my records now, I missed an entire year of high school in truancy.
Wow.
Just in cutting school. And again, it was because I could kind of work the system. My dad wasn't home. He was working 3 jobs. Me and my mom had completely lost contact. So you can imagine how, that sort of thing. I mean, I totally get now why she did what she did and how she was trying to instill that to me. But again, trying to get that across to a 14-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So like to me, I felt abandoned. I felt like, she didn't care about me. I mean, I know it's the complete opposite now. We have a great relationship.
Yeah.
But, at the time, that's how I felt. And my dad was super busy and things were hectic, and I was just kind of on my own out there.
Yeah.
So I was really lost. I mean, I think that one of the things that helped me the most going through that period of time was talking with the secretary in the vice principal's office. It's kind of an odd place to think about, going for help. But I spent so much time down there in trouble for different things. And she would just talk to me about like, you're a smart kid. Like, why do you do this to yourself? You could do whatever you want. And really was one of the few people that kind of believed in me. That was really like, I want to see you do something. I want to see something.
Was that March?
This was in Bayonne. So we were up there as well. So she really, I think kind of.
I was just going to ask you, who was the trusted adult?
Pushed in that direction to go there again. And we ended up moving out of Bayonne. My little brother, both of my older brothers had dropped out and gotten GEDs.
Okay.
So they did not have a great experience at Bayonne High School. Bayonne High School is a Very interesting place. My first day of school there when I transferred. Well, you want to talk
Yeah.
about like a rude awakening coming
Mm-hmm.
from Tinton Falls to up there. Like my very first day of school, they brought me in. I got a locker. I put my jacket in the locker. They take me down to guidance to introduce me to the schedule. We get put into a lockdown while we're in guidance. So
Mm-hmm.
everything's closed. We're in there. There was a stabbing in the hallway. So a kid
Okay.
literally got stabbed to death on my locker that I had just put my clothes in. So I didn't even get to get my winter coat back because it was part of a crime scene that was being here. This is like the first day of school, you know,
Yeah.
this kid gets murdered in the school.
Oh
and
my
this is just
God.
like, where am I? You know, I mean, like, what just happened here? You know, where did I end up going in this sort of high school? So that was a huge transition, a huge, you know, thing for me to go through that. And again, because of this sort of scenario that we were in, my little brother ends up living with my dad, and he decides, you know, we're going to go get out of Bayonne. Like maybe Bayonne is the problem. Let's get out of Bayonne. We're going to go down to Ocean County.
Okay.
So I went down to Ocean County. You know, I thought when I got down there, like, let me enroll in college. Let me try to make some money. So my dad, you know, at the time it was like computer science was the thing to do. So that's what I was going to do. I was going to be a computer scientist. I had no interest. I was never happier than not being in high school. You know? And again, my senior year ended the same way. I got caught forging doctor's notes. And at the end of senior year, and it was the same. It was like 8th grade all over again. They sent me home. They were like, no prom, no graduation, no nothing. Just get out of here.
Yeah.
And I remember Skripak, he was the vice principal up there, when he talked to me. He said to me, you know, you coming back next year isn't going to do me any good. And it's not going to do you any good. He's like, so just take it and do something with your life. Like, just do something, you know. And I kept hearing that. I think that like that phrase really stuck in my head. I'd heard it from the secretary. I'd heard it from her. Still was kind of lost, went down to Ocean County College, got involved down there. And really, like, the event that changed my life was September 11th, because I went, I was a sophomore in college when that happened.
Okay.
And I was completely like disgusted with computer science. I mean, I'm ADHD. I can't sit still. You know what I mean? Like, I'm fidgeting. I got to jump out. Like, you'll hear me moving around during this podcast. And like sitting in a cubicle and solving math problems all day is not going to fly for me. But I needed money. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not from a family with a ton of money. So to me, it was like I felt kind of trapped in that. And when September 11th happened, we had, because we lived in Bayonne, my stepmother ran a daycare center. So she watched a lot of people whose families worked in the World Trade Center. And we had really close relationships with 2 of them who died. And it really, it shook me. You know what I mean? It was really something. I've had a couple of times in my life where I've had some real, like, you know, slap across the face, wake up kind of moments. And 9/11 was one of them for me. I remember coming back from Colleen's funeral, you know, watching her kids cry on each other. You know, they're about the same age, honestly, as my kids are right now. And that, you know, they were never going to see mom again. And like, when you get face to face with a situation like that, like, I think a lot of kind of the BS falls away, you know, where it's like, what is important here? Like, what is it that I really want to do with my life? And I think at that moment, like, the thing that kind of jumped out to me was, you know, I want to do something that helps people. Like, I wanted to do something that was the opposite of September. I think immediately my reaction was anger. You know, I think a lot of our reaction was anger. But after that anger kind of subsided, and you start to realize, like, you know, what am I doing here? Like, well, part of my view was I want to do something to help somebody. And I had no idea what that was. I was totally lost. But I was dating this girl called Christina, right? Over there, you might have met her. You know her as Mrs. Nappi, right?
Yeah.
And she said to me, I think you should be a teacher. Now, she was going for teaching, so I don't know how self-serving this was, if she just wanted me to follow her into the teaching program, or where that was, or if she really saw something in me. But, you know, we had a conversation after that kind of changed my life, because I laughed at the idea of being a teacher. I'm like, dude, I'm so happy to be out of school. I'm not going back there. There's no way that you're getting me back into school. And she said to me, you know, if you're in charge, you can make it whatever you want. You know, like, it doesn't have to be the way that you did. And I had never thought of that. Like, it never occurred to me that, like, I didn't have to make school the way it was. Like, school to me was just this thing that was there. It was, you know, you either did it or you didn't do it. I never felt involved in anything at school. I felt like I was being taught at, like, I was a cog in a machine. You could take me out, throw another kid in that seat, and it didn't matter. Joe Nappi was not important to this particular thing. So like that really got me thinking as I went into college and started about like what was wrong with what happened to me. Could somebody have reached me in that situation? You know what I mean? Because I'm not as like, you know, I think I really do wish at some point in time that I had more involvement with sports through that period of time, because again, I was just working the entire time. So it was impossible for me to really put in that time and commit to being an athlete when I had to go and work with my father and go do those sort of things at that time. So I really wonder sometimes, like, if I had that coach, if I had that person to run there. And when I got a chance, you know, Jay Morrell was coaching for us at the time, and he came up to me and was like, you know, I know you're a good teacher. You know, I know you didn't play a lot of football over there. I mean, I'd only played a little bit freshman year. It wasn't like I had some, you know, all-star, you know, NFL career here or something to hang my hat on. And he came to me and said, you know, did you want to coach? And that was really another interesting moment for me, because again, I thought, you know, this is a real opportunity for me to reach people, and to do that. And I think, you know, coaching for me, I did it for 11 years. I mean, one of the most meaningful experiences of my life, because I don't, you know, I don't think you understand how much kids need guidance in those years. And for me, it was not getting it that made me want to be that person for somebody else. So like, to me, when I look back through this time period, like the thing that I'm most proud of when you ask me about this, it's not the accolades, it's not the awards, it's those relationships that I built with kids where they were like me, just lost in the world, you know, because I fully get that I'm super lucky in so many regards, you know, because so many people who tell a story like that of, you know, running away from their problems and running away from these things and hiding and not having guidance, they certainly don't sit here with meaningful careers and, you know, accolades and things like that next to their name. So I don't want it to be blind luck for other kids. You know what I mean? That they happen to meet the right girl who puts them on the right path, or that, you know, they have that stable family life. Because again, like, as crazy as my story sounds, I think, to a lot of people, I think it's important to remember also that, like, my parents were there. You know, it's not that my dad didn't care about me. It's that he was working 85 hours a week. You know what I mean? It's not that my mom didn't care about me. It was that she didn't, you know, she saw a different path to that than maybe I needed at that exact moment in time. And like, they're doing their best. So I had guidance in my life. I think what shocked me to a big extent coming into teaching is the amount of kids that don't have that are really out there on their own. And like, it's so important, I think, for us to be there for those kids, to talk to those kids, to try to help them see that there is a path forward here, that there is some place for you to go. And once you know, you find that passion, because, you know, Christina didn't realize it at the time, but she unlocked in me what I was missing, like, for all those years, because I was adrift, you know, in the world. I didn't know what my passion was. I didn't have that thing to guide me, to push me on that path. And it ended up being education, it ended up being relationships, really, with students, and being there for them to do it. So like, kind of everything that I've done in my career is based on those relationships, is based on looking out for those kids, and kind of this weird quest that I have to, like, save Joe Nappi. You know what I mean? Like, that's, like, I'm gonna be the one to go back and save that kid.
It's your why.
And try to help. Exactly.
It's your why.
And I think that fundamentally is what is so hard for you to see, because when you're 14, 15, it's like nothing makes sense. You know, all I knew was kind of anger at that point in time. You know, I knew I wasn't happy. I knew that I was angry at the things I was seeing at the world, but I felt powerless. I felt like there was nothing I could do to change that. And now I know that's not true at all. You know, every one of us has an amazing ability to impact other people. You just have to give yourself that credit to do it. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to get over.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And it gives me chills. It makes me want to cry. My heart's like beating out of my chest talking to you, because the work that I quit teaching to do is totally, you just prove to me that it's what's supposed to be done. Because what I'm trying to do is coach the coaches, teach the teachers, explain to them that the bottom line of what they're doing is reaching the Joe Nappis, is reaching the Angela De La Russos. My story is very similar. Is saying, instead of complaining about all of the little things, it's finding that kid that needs you, because then that kid is going to change the world like you are. And that's really what the biggest lesson is, because like you said, you had guidance. Some kids don't. But even the kids that do have guidance need that pat on the back. They need that, their eyes open. They need the hope. And that's what we're in the profession for. So even though I left a school building. I'm still doing it every day, and being able to talk to people like you, that you just put the nail on the head. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, it's really cool that's like what you're doing at the core of it. It
Right.
really
And I was gonna
is.
say there's so many angles
So
to
many
the same place.
angles.
You know what I mean? So I
So
mean
many.
everybody's got to come at it from their own
Yeah.
direction. Because it's
Yeah.
not just like teaching's not the only avenue
No.
towards that.
No.
Everybody's important.
Yeah.
here
I
for
just
this.
couldn't be, like, I just couldn't be in the school system anymore, because you and I are different, because you really liked your subject matter.
Right.
I mean, I liked history listening to you talk,
Right.
and I don't even understand history. I mean, I failed it 100 times.
Yeah.
But
you would have passed my class.
You would have figured it out.
We would have got you.
But
through.
me, science, whatever.
Yeah,
the periodic table was the periodic table.
Right.
And that's why, like, I ended up in the ED program. But regardless of that, you love the subject matter, and then your kids see. And I had the athletes say that they were never just taught at. They felt a part of the classroom. And it was like, it's really, you are very consistent in that, and you should be really proud. Yeah,
well, I am definitely. Sure. And again, I think it's an interesting, like, to me, it teaches me so much, because I just love to learn stuff. You know what I mean? Like, to me, when I got to coach football, like, I got to understand the game at such a level that I had never even considered before. And like, after doing it for 11 years, like, I don't know any, you know what I mean? Like, I meet someone like Coach Mosca. Like, Mosca's forgotten more things about football than I've ever known. You know what I mean? My entire life, you just realize, like, how complex and how different the world is to see that. And like, one of the great things about, whether you're coaching or whether you're in this, is you getting to meet all these different perspectives on the world and hear their stories and think about things in different ways. Because I've really had kids that like challenge my worldview, because I've never thought about it from their perspective. You know what I mean? I didn't have to walk in their shoes. And no two stories are the same. So you hear that. And again, I think that's what I love about history too. Because for me, I'm always looking for, like, all right, I'm going to do this thing, but like, who somebody must have done this before, right? Like, we've been, we've been here for thousands of years. Somebody must have tried this. And to hear those stories in the past, especially people who have done like such amazing things, and come out the other side from it, and to experience those things. I mean, like, 'cause I do a lot of stuff, obviously, with the Holocaust.
I was just going to say, I want to know what you're most passionate about.
Right. And you meet, I mean, for me, it's been like relationships with Holocaust survivors. I mean, especially like, I get to work at Brookdale with Manny Lindenbaum. And Manny Lindenbaum was a Holocaust survivor whose parents essentially had like an unthinkable choice. Like, they were trapped in Poland, surrounded by the Nazis, and there was no way for them to get out. The only thing they could do was to send their children away with strangers. Like, and you like think about that idea of like, I'm just going to give my kids away on the trust. And like, they knew that was the best shot. It was the best chance for them to get out of here. So he, as a 11-year-old kid, is taken from his parents and put on a boat with strangers and sent over to England. I mean, he doesn't speak English. He doesn't do this. He's torn apart from his parents. I mean, like, all the stuff that he went through over there. His sister, who was, I believe, 16 at the time, was supposed to travel with him. And sort of the tragic part of the story is that, the cutoff age was supposed to be 17. England was willing to let kids in, but they didn't want adults, because this is during the Great Depression. They were scared they were going to steal jobs from people who needed them. So his sister goes to get on the boat, and they deny her. The boat captain thought that the cutoff was 15. And because he thought that, she ended up not being able to get on. And she kind of like forces her younger brothers on, like, get on the boat, go, you're free, get them to safety. And she stays back. And like, Manny goes over, suffers through the entire war, doesn't know what happened to his family, and finds out on the other side that they were murdered by the Nazis. His sister died, pushed him on the boat, and ends up dying on the other side. And like, for like a lot of people, that would be the moment where you started hating humanity, or where you got lost in that sort of misery. But Manny chose to focus not on the horrors that he had gone through, but on the people that had saved his life. Because the other side of that story, it's easy for us to focus on the negative and to see, all the horrible things that happened to him. But what he saw in that story was, these people were total strangers. They didn't know me from anybody else. And they went out of their way and risked their lives to save me. And he really felt like, he could do that for other people. And that became sort of his focus in life. So he spent the rest of his life working with refugees who are like fleeing from unbelievable places and trying to help them get to say, I mean, like the guy's like a real life superhero. And like
Yeah.
you talk to him
Yes.
and like to sit here and listen to him and like to have gone through that perspective and come out on the other side, like that's the lesson that he got out of it. Like it's just unbelievable to think about how much power you really have. You know, like those are extreme situations, certainly. But like, you know, every coach, every teacher, every person like that has that ability to reach that kid
Yes.
that's lost and to bring them back, you know, and give them an opportunity to really strive and succeed and find that passion that's gonna, you know, it just multiplies. So it multiplies out when you go through.
And the mindset.
Yeah, without a doubt.
His mindset, like taking to what happened to him and say, all right, now I'm going to give to other people and I'm going to look at it positively, when he could have tanked it completely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, honestly, like I wouldn't have blamed him if he had tanked, you know what I mean? In that circumstance, like I would totally understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, those stories and like really the power of the individual stories. And there's so many of them throughout history.
So
you know,
many
people who were in impossible circumstances who could have took the easy way out, but they decided, no, I'm going to stand up for what's right. I'm going to do what's right here. I'm going to try to help somebody out, no matter what the risk is. And like that to me is inspiring. You know, when I have a bad day and I'm dragging and I don't want to do this, you know, at that point in time, like those are the stories that I think about.
And they're all around us.
Right.
And kids, like you know, one of my dreams is to bring to light that they are all around us because they're happening. Like when you think someone's not going through something, they are, and no one realizes how powerful their story is. And when they share it, they're changing at least one person's life. And that's really a powerful thing to remember, especially these kids who think that they're, well, I mean, I'm sure I know why they think that way with social media and everything that they say about kids these days, but you know, it's our job to remind them that they are different, they are unique, and they can do it, you know? So so what is your, like, with your kids now, your dad. So we're going to talk about Dad Joe. And what is the one thing that you really want them to know about just life? Like, what do you want them to carry with them no matter what?
I think for me, it's about happiness, right? Like I stress for them a lot that like what makes me happy is not necessarily going to make you happy. And I've seen a lot of stuff. I mean, this is, I think, is the hardest thing to deal with any kid. Is, you know, when you're young, you're invincible and you feel like you know everything. You know what I mean? So like to hear from me, to tell you those stories, that's fine. You know, I try not to be the, you know, let me tell you about walking to school both ways uphill in the snow guy. I want to more give them opportunities to explore their own passions and try to figure out what it is that drives them.
I love that.
And make sure that they're supported in those interests. Like I try not to be like, you know, you signed up for it. Like I'm a commitment guy, you know, if you make a commitment, you need to follow through on that commitment. But I'm also not, you know, my older daughter, she signed up to play soccer. And really didn't love it, and she stuck it out for the season, and she played, and she followed her responsibilities, and she did everything. You know, she wrote a thank you note to her coach at the end of the season, and that was it. But then, you know, that's fine, Gianna. If that's not what speaks to you, I'm not going to drag you to soccer for the next 30 years and force you to be, you know, to live out my dreams of you going D1. And then, you know what I mean? Like for me, it's like, well, what are you passionate about? So let's go try this and let's go try that. And let's do it. Cause I feel like a lot of life is trying on different hats, right? And trying to see what fits. And it's okay to not know. And it's okay to experience things. And again, I think I stress to them, you know, if you say you're going to do something, then do it. You know what I mean? And be real with someone. If you really are not feeling it and that's what it is, that's okay. And people understand that. I mean, I remember, I'm still friends with this kid, but I remember, you know, coaching freshman football and having a kid who came out to try to be quarterback, you know, and he gave it his all. He tried it, but it just was not happening for him. You know, he was not excited about it. He didn't love it. I could see him like dragging himself to practice and doing that sort of stuff. And we had a convo, you know, because I always made time to talk with my players and, you know, talk to him about where he was. And he was like, you know, I think I want to be in the band. And I walked him down to Jerry Romano and we talked about the band and the transition and all that stuff over there. And I'm like, go be the best band, you know, player that you can be, man. Like, that's what it is. And I appreciated that, you know, that
who was that kid?
He was honest enough to come to me. And
was he in the play?
He did end up in that too, and he's still in marching band over here. The names is I'm so bad with names. I apologize off the top of my head. I have room in my head, Ange, for like 125 names,
Yeah,
and I
no,
have
and
100 students right now. You know what
yeah,
I mean? So
I know, I know, I
it
know.
goes out my
No,
head.
and I'm trying to think of his name
I
too,
know
so
the
I
first
get it.
name is Noah, but I don't know the
Okay,
last name.
okay.
The last name is
I'm
escaping me
thinking
off
of
the top
somebody
of my head.
different because Noah I would remember.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He was Noah. I can't remember the last name,
that's
but
all
again,
right.
great kid. And
Yeah.
like again, like I appreciated. I know that he probably took some flack from other players on the
Mhm.
team that he
Mhm.
ended up walking off and going on the band, and I'm sure he went into that. But like the bravery that that kid had
Yeah.
to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to
That's
say that
cool.
to me, like I really appreciated that. And I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna beat him up about it. I wanted to
No.
encourage him
Yeah.
to go and do what spoke to him because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like that's what it's about. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's about finding what you're passionate about, what drives you. And that's what I try to instill in my daughters is like
Mhm.
I'm not a high pressure. I have high expectations for you,
Mhm.
especially if you're gonna say that you're gonna do something. I
Yeah.
expect you to put
Yeah.
your all into it and to try and to be committed and to, you know, people are depending on you, you know, especially if
Yeah.
it's a team sport. But at the same time, like you got to figure out what speaks to you. And again,
Yeah.
for me in terms of happiness, like one of the things that I find brings me the most happiness is helping other people.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Those
Mhm.
experiences of volunteerism and doing
Mhm.
things with the Girl Scouts and things like that. Like I really like to take a moment with my daughters and just let them reflect on like where their mindset
That's so
is at these
cool.
moments because I think it's important to reinforce that
Mhm.
for them, like the way you
Mhm.
feel when you come back from working at a homeless
Mhm.
shelter, you know, feeding
Mhm.
people meals that they wouldn't have had if you weren't out there
Mhm.
doing that.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that's a great
excellent.
feeling, and that's something that, you know,
Yes.
drives you to want to do it down the line. And again,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people are looking for happiness outside of them.
Yes.
You know, I always make the joke to my kids, like, you know, you can't buy happiness. You can buy a jet ski, you know, and
That would make you
you
happy
can't
too?
not be happy on a
Oh,
jet
I
ski. You
hate
know what I
jet
mean? Don't
skis.
really? All right,
Yes,
there.
they make me go, they go so fast, and I don't know. I don't like things that go
All
really
right, so this
fast.
is a bad
That's a
analogy for
bad
you.
analogy,
For
but it's
me,
I get it. We all have
you know
different
what I'm saying? So
happiness.
whatever that thing is that's in there too. But you know what I'm saying? But like I always say, like eventually you're gonna have to get off the jet ski. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yes.
you can't live on the jet ski. So you're gonna have to figure out another way to be happy besides that tool. That
Yes.
cool toy is gonna make you happy for a little while.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, like you got to go to bed with
Yeah.
yourself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And if you're not looking in the mirror and you're not happy with what's happening, like that's really what you got to focus on.
Sure.
And you got to through that. And that to me is like more, I mean, I do it as a dad, but I also bring it to my students too,
Yeah.
because it's like at the end of the day, I would love it if they all came out as, you know, doctors of, you know,
Mhm.
history and going out there between that too. But I'm just as happy if they're happy. You know what I mean? That's what I
Mhm.
want to say. I want to see them later on
Yeah.
and that they're happy and that they're content and that they're helping other people and,
Mhm.
you know, helping us build a more positive world. Like
Yeah.
that's
The
what I really.
community service thing is really big. I've
Mhm.
always admired you for that and the Key Club and everything you did with that. I'm seeing the big difference bringing it into all in athletes, the community side, the way I see the kids light up,
No.
giving them that experience is really changed them. And the fact you're doing it with your kids is awesome. And that leads me into the next thing. You know, always admired your marriage. You
All right.
know, you and Christina, you definitely complement each other. Very passionate
She
about what you
deserves most
do.
of the credit for this. Though.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
should be here
It
accepting
would, yeah.
the award for
So,
tolerating me somehow for all
oh
these years.
no,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I would say probably the second thing that slapped you in the face was when you had your heart attack.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah,
Yes,
it
and
changed
so
everything. Yeah.
I remember like having that. I saw the way that your wife stood by your
Hmm.
side and got you in shape, and just she's all about yoga. She's all about that healthy eating mindset, meditation, and
And
I really I really think that's great. I'd like you to go into a little bit of the keys of your marriage
well,
and
here's
how.
one of the background stories on that too that I
Okay,
don't think anybody really knows
yeah,
is
I want
that
to hear it.
Christina was considering transitioning out of education. So we
Really?
were at that point in serious discussions about her purchasing a yoga studio.
Okay.
Like that's what we were talking about. And I was
Wow.
obviously hesitant about it. You know, I'm the poor
Yeah.
kid here, so I'm like I get super nervous about the dollars and cents of this of like
Yeah,
how are
it's
we gonna pay the
scary.
bills? What's gonna happen? You know, like I get into that. And she was really driving because I think she felt like she had hit a wall at a
Yeah.
certain point in there. She was
Mm-hmm.
frustrated by the system, frustrated by this. And she wanted to go pursue her passion. So it was like we were kind of having this
Yeah.
delicate dance. And then when I had the heart attack, you know, she dropped everything and just
Mm-hmm.
came to me. So again, like I had it at 36.
Mm-hmm.
You know, benefits of exercise over there too. You know, I had a heart attack for 16 hours.
Ugh.
and I'm alive. And a lot of that, the doctors told me
You
that
had
a
a heart
lot.
attack for 16
16
hours?
hours. Yeah, I'm a
Holy
glutton for
smokes.
punishment apparently for
Oh
that
my
stuff. So
gosh.
uh,
You are a
eh,
resilient, my
I
man.
guess so. Yeah, yeah. I'm hard to kill. I go over there. Us bay rats, we never die. That's it. But yeah, yeah. So I had it for all the time. And then one of the things the doctor said to me was that because I was actually, cardiovascularly in pretty good shape,
Okay.
that's one of the reasons why I was able to live through that, having two fully blocked arteries. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
still managed to
Yeah.
walk myself into the emergency room. My
Wow.
uncle deserves a big thing too. So uh, I started feeling sick the night before.
Yeah.
We had stuffed peppers for dinner, and I thought
Mm.
like, oh man, maybe I'm
Indigestion.
yeah, exactly. I'm
Yeah.
having a little heartburn, blah 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 blah. I really couldn't sleep, but really with it, I know a lot of people like bug out now and here. I got
Yeah.
heartburn. I'm having a heart attack. Like
Yeah.
I also felt like something was horribly wrong.
Yeah.
So I would say, for warning, I didn't have the classic,
Yeah.
crutch my chest kind of heart attack, but I had this just feeling that
Mm.
everything was wrong and I
Mm.
couldn't figure it out. I couldn't sleep that night. I had a final exam the next morning. So I went in and gave the final exam.
Mm.
After the final exam, my buddy's mother had passed away. So I was going
Mm.
up to Bayonne to the funeral. So I went home, I got changed, I drove
Mm.
up to Bayonne. And when I walked into the funeral hall, I collapsed in the
Oh.
funeral. So by that point in time, I had started having that heart attack at like 8 o'clock the night before, and this was like 4 o'clock the next day
Holy
when
smokes.
that happened. And
Yeah.
I collapsed at the thing, and I thought I was just dehydrated. I was like, I drank some coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're 36, so it's like it's not a
Yeah.
heart attack. I'm not having any of these things. That's it. And my uncle was at the funeral. He lived in Bayonne too, so he had shown up to show respects to Joe's mom. And he was like, "No, you go to the," because I was going to drive home. And
Yeah.
if I drove home, I was dead. Like I
Yeah.
would have, because I crashed after that. They had to resuscitate me with shock paddles. So that would have happened with me doing about 80 on the turnpike
Mm-hmm.
by the time that came home. And Uncle Neil told me when he was there, he's like, no, I didn't want to go to Bayonne Hospital. All my relatives have horrible experiences at Bayonne Hospital. He was like, come with me. There's a new emergency center that opened up
Yeah.
around the corner. So come over there. Let's just get
Yeah.
checked out. And he talked me into walking over there. So I went
Mm.
over there to the thing, and then they told me I was having a heart attack and rushed me into surgery and the thing. It's a surreal moment to have
Yeah.
that. And then by the time they got me to the hospital, I crashed out again. So I literally like woke up in surgery.
Oh
They
wow.
had shocked me back, I guess,
Yeah.
the consciousness and everything like that to go through it. And did that. So, she stopped everything and
Mm.
came to me because I mean, obviously at that point in time, I don't know what this means. Am I going to
Yeah.
be able to go back to work? Am I going to be able to do what I'm
Yeah.
doing? Did I give myself a heart attack? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
am I so intense and doing all the stuff that I did that I drove myself into an early grave here? Or what's
Yeah.
going on? And it turns out that I had, there's a genetic condition in my family about
Okay.
processing cholesterol. So really, like the moral of the story is I should have been on medication since I was 16, and I found out 20 years
Oh.
too late.
Okay.
So good
Yeah.
news, bad news. But the
Yeah.
bad news
Yeah.
is I had to drastically change my diet. So you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So it's,
Mm.
Neen tells the funny story about telling this to Spomp, when she came in and he was like, wait, you can't have mozzarella? You can't have you can't have any parm. What are you talking? What about chicken parm? He was like going listing out all the parms that I couldn't have. It's a very
True Italian.
Yeah, I was
True
about to say
Italian.
very Italian reaction to my problem there, and I feel it. Trust me, I still feel it now. But
So you still have none of that food.
occasionally, I mean, like I could do a little bit here and there,
Yeah.
but I got to be selective.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Everything in moderation.
Okay.
But I'm on medication too, which helps
Okay.
me somewhat. But I went through everything because I was not the my diet routine was not the pinnacle of excellence. Let's put it that way. All right, for that. So I had to change a lot of things about my life after that happened. And again, it was another moment where like it was like prioritized. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing here? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm doing 50 different things at this point in time.
Mhm.
What is it that really matters to me, and where do
Yeah.
I feel like I can make the best difference? Because I mean, again, like I think this is one of those things about having ADHD is, I see this shiny thing and I'm like, hey, all right, let's do
Yeah.
this, let's do that. That's great. This
Yeah.
is awesome. This is
I
great.
understand.
And it's a amazing
Mhm.
superpower too at the same time, because like
Yeah.
once you get focused on something and you're like, I want to do this, it's like
Yeah.
I'm in it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I will not eat. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I'm just like, I got to
Yes.
get this done. I got to
Mhm.
do this. And do that. But the question I think, and the thing that we kind of came to after that is like, well, where am I best directing myself? And one of the things that I felt like after having that was that I didn't feel like I had done enough to truly dedicate myself in the classroom. And I
Yes.
know that seemed kind of weird at that time to have that
Yeah.
conversation with Christina, but I was like, I really feel like I could do even more
Yeah.
if I was truly focused on
Mm.
that. And she did it. And I'm just like back to her sort of reaction on this too. I think one of the things that kept her here was like the tremendous response from the Monmouth regional community to us,
Yeah.
because it was like, what do you need?
Yeah.
And, take the days that you got to go, it
Yeah.
wasn't like getting hassled over,
Oh
like,
no.
you don't have enough personal
Yeah,
days
I
or something like
remember
that
Andy
to do that.
was
Yeah. Like he
he
was
was
phenomenal,
so
phenomenal with
yeah.
letting her go. And
I
like
just
our,
remember.
the people who stepped up for us in our departments and
Mhm.
cleaned out my room, which if you've ever seen the episode of Hoarders, that is my room, and like, that is no small undertaking. You know what I mean?
I didn't know that about you.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't know.
it's bad. It's bad.
Okay. All right.
I'll be accused of many things, but being overly organized is never going to be one of
No.
them. The gun. So for her and my wife and like our departments, and again, like it reminds you of what's important. It
Yeah.
reminded us of that family that we had. It reminded how much people cared for and respected us.
Mhm.
And I mean, honestly, it's why she's still teaching. I think
Yeah.
right now is that moment
Mhm.
wasn't like a fear of, now I'm financially unstable. It was like, this really is important. I think the
Yeah.
conversations we had with me about like focusing on the classroom, I think also inspired her to be like, let me turn in
Yeah.
and really look at this and really be the best that we could. So like a lot of the things that came out of that
Yeah.
afterwards are the reason why I'm
Again.
sitting here as state teacher of the year, because I like focused in on,
Mhm.
this is really my
Mhm.
mission. Like this is
Yeah.
my purpose. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And again, hopefully to expand that out. I mean, that's one of the great things I think about this position is that I get to
Yeah.
go out and share my experience and share my story with other people in the hopes that they can
Yeah.
think about things differently.
Yeah.
Because I mean, again, like other, we run the Monmouth Helping Its Own charity in
Yes.
there. Christina and I are both part of that at the high school. But like that came out of a student. We
Mhm.
had a student who, it was my second year
Mhm.
teaching, and she came into class. It was like, she was a
Mhm.
problem student, the
Mhm.
one who was the senior taking US
Yeah.
2 and needed
Mhm.
it to graduate. And
Yeah.
she's a pain and nobody
Yeah.
listens to her. And that was it. And like, those were the kids that I used to laser in
I
on, where
love
I'm
those
like, all right, yeah,
kids.
exactly, exactly. Like, I'm going to get
They're
to
the
know you. I want
best.
to know this. And me and her had a pretty cool thing going. Like
Mhm.
I thought things were going great. And then it was like Friday. It was supposed to be like a chill class. We were playing a review
Mhm.
game. We are having some fun. It wasn't like anything serious. And she just was not having it. Like from the
Mhm.
moment she came in, she was angry and head
Mhm.
down and the whole thing. So like, what, take your day, have your time, go over there, do you, I'm gonna leave you
Yeah.
alone. And at the end of the period, I walked up to her and was just like, hey, not for nothing, but we got the test on Monday. So, your grades, like you're hovering right at a 70. You probably want to look at the study guide. And I gave her a second. And she like threw it at me, flipped the desk over,
Mhm.
cursed me out, walked out in the hallway. And like, it was like upstairs in the 500 when we
Yes.
got that little overlook of the baseball field.
Mhm.
And she picked a chair up and smashed the window out in the upstairs thing and then went downstairs. So it was like, to me, like, what was that? Like
Yeah.
20 minutes ago, we were cool. And now it's
Yeah.
just like all this is happening. So it was hard, obviously you got to do your paperwork and, follow up. Where
Yeah.
is she? Everything like that. But I happened to be walking out of school that day and she was sitting outside and I walked up to her and, I'm like, what was that? Like, what? I don't understand it. Like, I've always been respectful to you. Like, what is the deal? And she just started crying and broke
Mhm.
down to me and told me, her mother had gone to Atlantic City 10 days ago. She didn't have any food in the house. The only reason she was even coming to school was because she needed food to eat. So she was
Mhm.
coming and grabbing this all day, and all
Mhm.
anybody cared about was her grades. And it's like, of course, like I'm focused on a test here, and this
Mhm.
kid's whole life is falling apart
Yeah.
around her. So we went back. Her guidance counselor was Joe Madoni. So we went down and met with Joe in the office and tried to figure this out. And we were both like taking the money out of our pockets, giving it to her,
Mhm.
making sure that she had some food and stuff like that. We had to, call social services now because like, where's
Yeah.
mom and where's the sister and all that sort of stuff. And after he left, me and Joe just sat in that office and talked about it. And he was like telling me like these stories, like
Yeah.
how he hears this all the time and this sort of
Yeah.
stuff, and how there used to be a superintendent fund and they used to do something about it, but that fell off years ago. And we always wanted to do this. And like, I just couldn't get her story out of my head. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
checked up with her over the weekend to make sure everything was cool.
Yeah.
You got food, everything like that. And that was the weekend I sat down and wrote the charter for Monmouth Helping Its Own. It was like,
Yeah.
let's try to do something together. So me and Joe worked on it and then pitched it to the board and then pitched it to the staff. and did all that sort of stuff.
That's
But it's
awesome.
like over the years, like I've
Yeah.
heard so many of
Oh,
these
yeah.
stories of
Yeah.
kids who are just facing like unbelievable
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think a lot of people look at our district as like, oh, it's a suburban district. It's so nice.
Yeah.
You're at the shore, you know, it's
Yeah.
nice and places like that. But it's like, this is
No.
everywhere, you know,
Yeah.
it's all
It's
over the whole country. It's not
everywhere.
just Monmouth, it's
Yes.
everywhere that this stuff happens. And I think
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of teachers, you know, not to be disrespectful towards them in any way, but a lot of teachers get into it because they're passionate about their subject area. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm gonna bring you that knowledge of math. I'm gonna bring you that knowledge of science, and
Yeah.
that's great. And like, you know, that's your passion. That's what you need to do. But I think sometimes we stop to think. You don't always stop to think as teachers about how, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm building this special seed here. I've got my lesson plan and, you know, my fun activity and all this stuff that's going to happen. But if this kid, yeah, I know you get itchy.
You know, I
about
get
this.
crazy about
Yeah,
lesson
yeah,
plans.
you know what I'm saying? But like, I mean, people think that like, you know, if I plan enough
Yeah.
stuff and I have it perfect, that
Oh,
this is going
yeah.
to work. And it's like, if this kid's
No.
life is falling apart
They
that's
don't
sitting
care.
in front of you, like that's the real
Yeah.
issue you got to deal with right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know it's not fair. Like, I know a lot of people are like, I just want to teach and I just want
Yeah.
to do that. But it's like, that's really not the
No,
job
it's not
a
why
lot of
you're in
times.
this
You know what I
job.
mean?
It's
Not a lot of
relationships.
times.
You said it from the
It is
very beginning.
100% about
And
that.
you
Right.
were able to go back, circle back, find that kid, and there's no coincidence there.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what it is. That a lot of these kids, the ones that are acting out the most, are the ones that need it the most, as you've seen through the years. And
Right.
I didn't know that Monmouth Helping Its Own came out of that, but that was a really awesome program.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's pretty wild.
And again, it's been such tremendous
Yeah.
support from the staff too, because
Yeah.
the staff has been the one that's given us all these
Yeah,
donations over the years. So
absolutely.
like, you know, I
Mhm.
sit here like I get credit for, it, but I mean, like they're the
Yeah.
ones who've given up. You know, they went on teacher salaries and have thrown out
Mhm.
75 grand to these kids over
Yeah.
16 years that we've
Yeah,
been
it's
doing this. So
awesome.
you know, I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, that when you see the community come together, and that's I think one of the things that I've always loved about Monmouth
Yeah.
is that, you know, we have our differences and we have our fights and we get into, you know,
Yeah.
different nonsense. But when the rubber really meets the road,
Yeah.
and when you really have that heart attack, this moment like that, like you
Mhm.
really see the community come together
Yeah.
and do it.
There's a
And
real good core group of
right,
people
right,
there.
right, definitely,
Mhm.
definitely. And sometimes it's easy to get distracted from that,
For
but
sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really is true.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's in every school. Because
Yeah,
now
yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm able to go into other schools,
Mhm.
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody has their people, everybody has their core group, everybody has their issues, everybody has the kids. It's all the same problems everywhere. I mean, Tim, you're around teachers way more than I am in all
Yeah.
different districts, and I'm sure the stories just. I work for an organization now called Lead You,
Mhm.
and we go do assemblies, a lot of with the little kids, and we're all used to be teachers, so we're all teachers who left before we could get our pension, and but we still went back to make a difference somehow. Right. So I do it because I always wanted to see how to motivate the little kids. I mean, they're so freaking cute, but it's interesting because then we get together and what do? We just talk about teaching. And it's like we sometimes smack ourselves like, you know, when it's in you, you know, and the relationships matter. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what is your one piece of advice for a kid as we wind down?
One piece of advice. That's hard. I got a lot.
You probably have a lot. Give me some of your one-liners.
Yeah, I'm verbose.
Yes,
I'm verbose to go over there. I don't know. I don't have that. I don't have that one-liner.
You don't have a one-liner?
I don't know if I have that one-liner to go over there. But I mean, again, I would just come back to that happiness. You know what I mean? Like I think that to me is a driving force because I think when you really understand what happiness is, happiness is service to others.
Yes.
Right, and that's really
service
what it is. So I feel like when you talk about happiness and you talk about that, I know some people think of happiness as like a very selfish thing.
No,
but I don't think so. I think it's like finding a balance and finding an understanding of how that is and finding out what makes you happy and setting boundaries for yourself and knowing those sort of things because that's super important. I mean, like it might surprise, you know, people to hear even for me, like, you know, I turn my phone off at times. You know, I'm gonna stop answering my email. I have to be Joe Nappi and not you know, Mr. Nappi from different points in time. Like you have to have that. I mean, there's a great, I mean, if we're looking at this for kids, I think that to me is like try on those hats, find out what you're passionate about. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid of what other people think. I know for kids especially, they live in a world, and I felt this too. Like I was always on stage, like everyone was so focused on me and everyone was looking at me and I have to, you know, kind of please the crowd and make them happy. But I think one thing you understand as you get older in life is that no matter what you do, you're always going to have haters. You know what I mean? There's always going to be somebody, no matter what you do, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
My brother shared a good song with a rap song with me yesterday that was about that, where it's like, no matter what you do, you lose. So like, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So don't worry about what
Mm-hmm.
other people think. Because at the
Mm-mm.
end of the day, when you turn out the lights and when you go to bed, it's you.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one that you have to be happy with.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're happy and if you're satisfied with what you're doing and you feel like you're making a difference, that just changes everything, changes your
Yes.
entire outlook on life.
It's
So really
priceless.
that to me is it. And it's a journey, you know what I mean? It took me 36 years, you know what I mean, that to fully realize and understand where I was, what I was put here to do. So it's not something that I expect you at 14. If you got that immediate understanding of passion, that would be an incredible achievement.
Yeah, but I mean, you just look at all the stories that have happened. Every one of them was about resilience, but you had to go through them to get here. Right. And that's what, the big message for kids. You had to fail. You had to fall down. You had to get picked up by the people that love you. Right. You had to learn. You had to see people's perspectives. You had to find your why. So
it's the best teacher.
I have Joe Nappi sitting in front of me right now, full of verbose. That's a great thing to say. And there are 3 of my favorite words that I'm actually writing a book and almost finished are courage, grit, and gratitude. So I want to hear.
Love grit.
I want to hear from Joe Nappi. What is courage to you? You got a minute to talk about each one.
Okay. So courage, the most important part of courage is being yourself. Okay. That to me is one of the most courageous acts that you can do, is to truly be yourself at all times. Because I know that's something that I struggled with throughout my life with that. Because I suffer even now, like imposter syndrome. Like, do I really belong here? Am I that, you read, I go places, they read these accolades about me and I'm like, who's this guy? This guy sounds pretty good that they're talking about. You know what I mean? So it's real right there. But I mean, again, it's hard to be yourself, but there's nothing more courageous, I think, than being yourself. And that to me is courage. That. Like if you find yourself, everything else will make sense over there. It's a journey, but it takes courage to get there.
Grit's the best word. I mean,
grit's on. I mean, like I said,
grit.
If everything's easy for you, you don't value it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's those moments where you really understand how challenging it is out there in the world that makes your successes so valuable. So grit, I think, and staying with it and just having that commitment. And again, that comes from knowing yourself, because once I've only lived as me, Ange, but I'll tell you, like, when I really feel something, when I'm like, I absolutely believe this, no matter what, I'm going to stay on that path. I get knocked down, I get knocked, whatever has to happen, but I'm going to see it through. Like, and again, I think that comes from the courage to believe in yourself, right? And that grit is what you're going to need in order to get there. If you don't have grit, you're never going to make it on this journey, because it's not going to be easy. Nothing in life worth doing is ever easy.
Thank you for saying that. It isn't. And you've been building that grit since you were 14. And that's why it burns so strong inside of you, because you get it. And lastly, gratitude. What do you think about gratitude?
Without a doubt. I mean, you have to stop and think about all the things that have gone your way and broken your way, and the people who stood with you at different times who are out there. Like, I'm tremendously grateful for not just where I am right now, but for the people who are on this journey with me, right? Like, I'm unbelievably grateful for all of those students that I've gotten to meet over the years, for my children, for my family, for my wife, for my, all these people who were with me, for the friends that I've had along the way while we sit here. And again, like, that's where you really get to kind of savor the work that you've done, is in that gratitude. And again, I think when you talk about being happy over there, like, you have to stop. It can't always be like part of being successful is a drive to get there. You have to have that vision. You have to have that drive, but you got to also be grateful for those paths along the way. Like, that's the fuel that you're going to use to eventually reach that goal, is to understand how grateful I am in that situation.
That's awesome.
Cool.
That's
those are good words.
Those are good words, right?
For this book.
Yeah, it's called Soar Into the Storms.
Nice.
So kind of wrote it at a tough time within the past year, and kind of went back through all my stories as well, and said, used the analogy of a storm and the parts of the storm to talk about, like, how you get here. And it's having you today. I mean, first of all, you inspired me to keep going. Any person that even is on the right path needs to be inspired. And you can say that as well. Like, even though I'm teacher of the year, I'm doing all of these things, there are days everybody needs to be inspired. So there were so many times during this talk that I was meant to talk to you, meant to reconnect with you, bring you on here for everyone to hear like just the wisdom that you have, just the story that you keep going. And I just thank you for taking the time out. I know it's about the holidays and you're about to, go out and meet tons of new people. So we'll have to bring you back on and, hear how that journey went for the next 6 months.
Yeah. Definitely. Thanks for having me. Shout out to Eric too.
Yes,
for
Eric,
this incredible student, former student,
former Monmouth Regional graduate.
Go over there.
Yep. Takes good care of me and helps me grow this and build my dream.
I've got some embarrassing commercials he did when he was in my class.
We should play them at the end of this.